Yeah, hello, good morning, everyone. I think it's now 9 minutes past time, so we have to start. We have about 150 participants on Zoom. I hope the other one to have that is the YouTube may have some numbers that are there. So I think we can start with the neurophysiology. Um, Let me show this one. Yeah, so I hope everybody can hear me. I've already sent you the lecture notes on the Telegram page. So check the Telegram platforms. You can get the lecture note there. And then, so let me check this one. People say we should record, so make it. All right. So, last week, this week rather, this week, we started with the anatomy, that is the nervous system anatomy. So the anatomy, you see, we're looking at the structures and all that. So neurophysiology, we're going to look at how these structures function, and that is physiology. We look at how the structures function. So just have these are the objectives. We are going to also, at the end of the students should be able to listen, describe the parts of the nervous system and their components. I know already we've done the parts of the nervous system, so there's no worry about that. So we've already done the parts of the nervous system. Then list the various types of glia and their function. Remember, we have the glia cells, okay, which are the supporting cells that we have. Okay, so Jay is saying you can't hear well. Okay, so I'll try to increase, but I'm speaking very loud actually. Okay, so we'll look at all these. Also, I ask you to draw the part of a neuron and its function. I hope some have refused to, or I believe some have refused to draw it. Those who have refused, please, can you draw it today? And then we'll now describe the role of the myelin sheath. Remember, we talked about the cells that myelinate the axons of the neuron. And then also list the types of nerve fibers found in mammalian nervous system. We have already done some of them, like we said earlier. So we are just to look at especially excitable tissues. Okay, what are excitable tissues? These are tissues that are capable of generating impulse, or an impulse is also known as action potential. So action potential. These include nerves, muscle, sorry, and then some secretory cells are excitable tissues. So in last semester, we looked at the muscle contraction. And there you realize that before a muscle contracts, impulses have to be transmitted into the interior of the cell through the T tubules. And then they bind to the um, the Renity receptors where calcium ion is released and all that. We looked at the process. Now, before muscle contracts, they have to be stimulated by the nerves. So that's why muscle are innervated. That means they have nerve supply to them. So we are going to look at how the impulses are generated in the nerves. Last lecture, we said that the nerves are like electrical cables. The nerves are like electrical cables. And then, in the electrical cables, the electrons move, okay, to bring about the light, and there's that exchange of ions in general, the ions movement in the human nerves. These ion moves in and out to bring about the impulse that we experience. So we are just going to look at physically that. So some of them I'm going to jump. Camille, yeah, your hand is up. Camille, you can unmute yourself and talk.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, please. We are really struggling to get the voice. The audio seems it doesn't look quality for us. Sir. I don't know. I think it's your microphone. If you could adjust it for us.
Well, let me check the mic. So I can hear you. Yeah, just try to take, and then I think it it's fine. Can you hear it now? Yeah. Okay, so let's go on. All right, so I've the mic to me, I don't know. Sometimes the internet can also have effect on it. I've just tested it, and I think it's working. It's working well. Yeah. So okay. So if anything, you can so draw my attention. All right. So last we looked at, they get a review of that. We said the nervous system is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system made out 12 pairs of cranial nerves and then 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So we looked at that. Then the central nervous system is made out of the brain and the spinal cord. So we talked about those things. So don't worry about this. We are just going to look at the nervous system in general. We also said the neurons are the basic building blocks, or that the basic functional and structural unit of the nervous system. We say the human brain have about 100 billion neurons. And then when you look at the neuroclia or the glia cells, they are about 50 times that of the neurons. So they are more. So if that means about 500 billion that of the neuroclia or glia cells. Okay, the glia cells. So this is the central nervous system. We said we have the afferent division. This one you are having is the afferent division, and then the efferent division. Already the afferent division, we said that the sensory division. Okay, and the sensory division could be the somatic and then the visceral say afferent division or sensory division. They also have the efferent division, and these include the somatic and the autonomic. Remember, the autonomic is the same as the visceral, and which this one divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic, and so may have enteric nervous system. So just by revision, that is what we have. And then, so this is showing us our peripheral nervous system, where you have the sensory input, the central nervous system do the interpretation, and then send out the efferent neurons. We go to the effector organs, like the muscles and the glands. They are the effector organs. So just more on the other thing. Let's go straight to our neuron, and then very good. So this is where we are starting from. Then the neurons, like we are saying, are excitable tissue. And if they are excitable tissue, what do? They are capable of generating electrical impulse. Okay, capable of generating electrical impulse when, or signal when they are stimulated. Okay, when they are stimulated. Now, our main aim here is to look at how these impulses are initiated and also conducted across or from one point to the other. Okay, from one point, let's see, last we were saying that our main aim here is to look at okay, so how these impulses are generated, we should have knowledge. And it's very important. Why are we trying to learn how these impulses are generated? It's because, let's say you have pain. This knowledge will help you to know that, oh, this is what I should do so that the person's pain will be minimized or reduce the pain. Or sometimes they want to conduct surgery. How do they relieve the person of pain? So the knowledge of knowing that impulses from your fingers, from your toes, travel, how they travel will enable those who are dealing with the pharmacology industry, the drug production industry, to produce medicine that will help to prevent this pain. Or if you are a nurse, midwife, public health nurse, you are managing a patient with pain. This will help you to understand, to get the understanding that this is how this pain is carried to the brain. And this is how the brain will also respond to it. And therefore, in your nursing management, you are able to come out with nursing diagnosis and nursing management that will help in the caring for that particular patient. So that's why it's very important. So it's not like, oh, the person is having pain and you don't have knowledge of how this pain is generated. Okay, and it's very important. So let's go on with that. So now, if we have a neuron, I'm going to draw as I'll start my drawing. So now, if I have, this is a neuron. Okay, I've just cut. We have the cell body. Okay, this is the cell body. And then we have the axon. So remember, I have dendrites. Okay, these are the dendrites that are there. Dendrites. Then we have the axon, like this. So we're going to look at it. And the axon will end by dividing to what we call axon terminals, like that. And the terminal buttons are there. They could produce neurotransmitters. Remember that? So they produce neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine, such as dopamine, then the adrenaline and others. Now, this one here is the plasma membrane. That's the membrane, the plasma or the cell membrane of, so let me put it there, that is cell membrane. So let me use, or plasma membrane of the neuron. Now, inside here, that is cytoplasm. Okay, so we have the cytoplasm or the inner part. Then, or we have the intracellular fluid. So let me use last semester we did it cell. So intracellular fluid here. Okay, and then we have extracellular fluid. Remember that. So extracellular fluid. Okay. Now, last semester we said that the fluid in the intracellular might contain some ions. And if you remember, we said the predominant ion in the intracellular fluid is what? So we have potassium being that. Then the extracellular fluid, the most dominant cation there is the sodium. Okay, so that was the fact last semester with drivers. Now, these ions that, so we're saying, let me put a potassium here. So we have potassium ion inside here. That is most dominant cation there. Then we have sodium ion outside in the extracellular fluid here. So don't worry, at the end of it, you understand what we are talking about. So that is here. Like this. Some of you say you've not done science. Okay. Okay, Bella means I'll go over. So Bella, what I'm saying that I've drawn, this is the cell body of the neuron. Then we have the axon. Now the axon is just like the cell. So we have a plasma membrane. This one, that is here. So because I have the cytoplasm, and the cytoplasm or the it contains fluid, so we call it the intracellular fluid, ICF. The outer part of it contains extracellular fluid. Now, the extracellular fluid contains sodium ion. Well, like, it doesn't mean it's not having a potassium ion. It also have potassium, it have chloride ion. But the predominant cation is sodium ion. While the predominant cation in the intracellular fluid is potassium ion. Okay. Now, these ions now have charges, or their charges will line the plasma membrane. So there will be differences in the charges, so that when the cell, a neuron cell, is not stimulated, the outer part of it is usually positive. That is the extracellular part. It will be positively charged. So plus, so let me put plus here. Then the inner part, so here is plus here. Oh, sorry. So we have plus, another plus, like that. Then the inner part is negatively charged. Like. So now we have differences of charges in the extracellular part of the plasma membrane and then the intracellular part of the plasma membrane. And these differences in charges is what we call potential difference. We call it potential difference. So the differences in the charges between the intracellular part and the extracellular part of the neuron is is what we refer to as potential difference. Now, when a neuron is not stimulated, like it's not performing any action, then we call it a resting membrane. A resting membrane potential. Like when the neuron is not stimulated, so they get there, it's not doing, so we call it resting membrane potential. So the resting membrane potential is the differences in the charges between the extracellular and intracellular part of the membrane of a neuron that is not stimulated. Okay, that is not, so that is what this one is saying. It says potential difference that exists across a membrane is called membrane potential. And this arises because of the separation of the opposite charges across the membrane. I've just drawn that. So a cell that has not been stimulated is called a resting cell. You see that? The interior of the cell is negative. You can see my drawing there, with respect to the exterior of the cell. This potential difference in resting cell is termed as resting membrane potential, and it is attributed to only a few charges that line the membrane. That is what we are saying. Okay, so somebody, Sayiri, yeah, your hand is up. You can unmute and talk. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
please. Does that mean if a cell is not stimulated, the positive and the negative, their charges are equal?
Okay. Yes. So let me say yes to that. If they are not stimulated, the inner part will be negatively charged and the outer part, yes. So let's say they are equal at that time. Okay. The charges so that maintains okay. So let's assume a particular neuron is supposed to stimulate maybe a muscle, and you are not using the muscle at the moment. The neuron is resting. It's not stimulating it. You are not, maybe suppose that neuron is supposed to stimulate a muscle that you raise your hand, and you are not raising your hand. So why will it be doing? It's resting. So it's a resting cell, and therefore the potential difference, that is the differences in the charges across the membrane, is what we call resting membrane potential. Okay, resting membrane potential. Okay, so let's continue. Yes, so this one shows what I was trying to draw. So you can see that the outer extracellular part is positive, and the zone here, that is the inner part, the intracellular part, is negative. And these differences in charges is referred to as the resting membrane potential. Now let's see what causes the resting membrane potential. So the resting membrane potential is generated by the unequal distribution of charges, okay, across the membrane, as well as the membrane permeability to the ion. Now, why is the inner part negative and the outer part being positive? So we're going to explain why. Now, one thing you should know, physiology is answering questions like why this thing is happening. Okay, why does this thing happen? So we're trying to see. So I'm going to explain why inner part is positive, outer part is negative. Okay. So the resting membrane potential varies, but like of a neuron, usually varies between -1 millivolt to -90. Like this, a potential, the unit for measuring potential is millivolt. Just like if you want to measure a distance, we say it's in meters, kilometers, and all that. The unit for measuring it is what? That. So the resting membrane potential for a neuron is ranging between -1 to what? -90. It's not exactly precise, but it's
Move. Move.
Yo,
Okay. He's back.
hey, he's not the one. Kutia Benedicta, please, you are sharing your screen. Benedicta.
Yeah, okay. So thank you. Then my net went out, went off like that. Okay. All right. So I was trying to bring another concept. Now, the first concept was that a neuron have extracellular, the axons. So we have extracellular part, intracellular part. The extracellular part is usually positively charged. They contain predominantly cation, that is the sodium, and the intracellular part have more potassium. Yeah, hello. Okay, so let me see this thing. Whether I could say. Okay. All right. So somebody say you couldn't hear. I was not talking, so you can't hear anything. Yeah. So it's unfortunate the internet is having challenges, but I'm using a different system. So let's hope this one will continue. The university this thing has been cutting off and all that. All right. So um the concept I was driving at, we are looking at the um, yeah the equilibrium potential of ions. And we are just looking about three of these ions that we'll be using, or more importantly, two. That is the potassium and then sodium. And I'll explain that equilibrium potential is the measure, okay, of the voltage across the membrane when the outflow of an ion equals the inflow of the same ion. So if you look at potassium, the equilibrium potential of potassium is minus 90 millivolts. So this means that the inflow of potassium, the time the inflow of potassium is equal to the outflow, when you measure the voltage, the potential difference, it will be minus 90 millivolts. So with the same, applying the same to sodium, it is same. So sodium is plus 60 millivolts. And I want you to know that so that we'll use this one to advance our explanation or understanding of why inner part is negative, outer part is positive. So equilibrium potential for sodium, we say is plus 60 millivolts. And that of chloride ion is minus 70 millivolts. Okay. But like I said, we're going to be using the potassium and then the sodium more in this explanation. So what is the real state of the resting membrane potential? Or what are the factors that brings about the resting membrane potential? That is our main thing. Okay. So the main cation, I've already explained this. Cations outside the cell are the sodium, and then we have lesser amount of potassium there, and the one inside, and okay, the predominant anion. So when you say anion, that is negatively charged ion, are the chloride ion. Okay. Then separating these two competing chemical solutions is the plasma membrane, which was the fact when we were starting. Now, let's write this point down. What are the factors that bring about resting membrane potential? We're going to, you should write them down. Number one, is due to the passive movement of potassium ion across the plasma membrane. Okay. So one, we're saying due to passive movement of the potassium ion across the plasma membrane. Now, what we're saying that when we look at it, point one, bullet one, we're saying in the resting membrane, the movement of potassium across is higher, about 50 to 75 times that of the movement of sodium ion into the cell. So that means potassium moves out of the cell. And yes, potassium is able to move out of the cell and move in during the resting period. In the resting cell, there are more potassium channels than that of the sodium ion channels. And so when this potassium is moving or the sodium is moving, they try to maintain their equilibrium potential. And remember, the equilibrium potential for potassium is minus 90, and that for sodium is plus 60. Okay. So the resting membrane potential of a cell is therefore stand at it's standing at minus 70 millivolts. So it varies between minus 1 to minus 90. Okay, it stands at the resting membrane potential is minus 70 millivolts. Potassium moves along its concentration gradient outside the cell, and when it moves out, the inner part becomes negative. So I'm explaining why the inner part is negative. Number one, we said the potassium is permeable, or the plasma membrane is permeable to potassium than it is to sodium. So potassium is able to move out of the cell. And when potassium moves out of the cell, the inner part becomes negative. And because it's negative, you reattract it. Okay, it attracts it back into the intracellular part. Then it moves out, it attracts, move out, and as it's moving out, it leaves the inner part being negative. Okay. Now, sodium also moves into the cell that is along its concentration gradient. And as it moves in and out, it also moves in, it neutralizes the movement of the potassium ion. And therefore bring the equilibrium potential to the minus 70 millivolts. Okay. Now, coming to the factors that bring about this minus 70 at the resting membrane potential. Number one, we said is what? I believe you've written that one down. Passive movement of potassium ion. And this accounts for 80% of the resting membrane potential. So that means 80% of the resting membrane potential is due to the passive movement of the potassium ion. Okay. Then the remaining 20% is due to the activities of an ATP. Okay, that is sodium potassium ATP. Okay. This contributes directly and indirectly to the generation of the resting membrane potential. Okay, let me see. Some people are what they are expecting. Can you repeat what I say? I said a lot of things. Then hey, this one I didn't bring the recording. I'm recording. Yeah, it's recording, so don't worry. It has been okay. Yeah. Yep. So somebody hand was up. I think it's gone back. Okay. All right. So I'll repeat that. We're saying that the resting membrane potential is maintained at minus 70 millivolts. And What accounts for that? It's due to what? Passive movement. 80% of resting membrane potential is due to the passive movement of the resting membrane potential. The remaining 20% is due to the activity of a sodium-potassium ATPs, which contribute directly and indirectly. So let's see how it does. Directly, this sodium-potassium ATP is a carrier molecule. So it carries sodium out of the cell. It carries 3 sodium out of the cell and 2 potassium ion into the cell. Okay, it carries 3. Okay, so let's go to the here it is. Directly, since it carries 2 potassium are brought into the cell and 3 sodium out of the cell. Therefore, there will be a net positive charge in the exterior, making the exterior positive. We have explained why the inner part is negative. Okay, the exterior being positive in that, because potassium moves out. And even when potassium is being brought by the sodium potassium ATP, it bringing in 2 potassium and 3 sodium out of the cell, and therefore it's creating indirectly, it's creating concentration gradients that allow the movement of these ions. Okay, and this leads to the passive movement of the ions we are talking about. Elizabeth, you say you can't hear. I'll repeat what I was saying. So I'm saying that we're mentioning about 3 factors that account for the sodium, the resting membrane of a neuron. Number 1, due to the passive movement of the sodium potassium ATPs, which account for about 80%. Then indirectly, directly and indirectly, we have a carrier molecules which is called the sodium potassium ATPs. And this usually carries 2 potassium into the cell and 3 sodium out of the cell. Newman, your hand is up. You can unmute.
Please, is it the passing as in PASING or passive? That word is, I'm not getting it. Is it passive movement or passing movement?
No, passive movement. Passive, like, so when say passive, like, concentration. What is that? When you have diffusion. Diffusion is a passive.
Okay.
Everything that it's not active. It's a passive movement. Like, it doesn't use energy. It just travel along its.
Okay.
That is what.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome. So, we talked about the passive movement of the sodium, the potassium the potassium ion, and then indirectly, directly, sodium potassium ATP carries 2 sodium out and 3 sodium in. 2 potassium into the cell, 3 sodium out of the cell, making a net positive outside and a negative inside the cell. And this also creates concentration gradient. And this gradient brings about a passive movement. This Newman, you were asking, this is what we are talking about, passive. Okay, so it brings about passive movement across the plasma membrane. So that is a resting membrane when a neuron is not stimulated. So we go to when a neuron is stimulated, then what happens? When a neuron is stimulated, then what happens? Now, let's say you put your finger in fire. This fire or heat, or you touch hot iron, the neuron will be stimulated in that way. Or you step on something, somebody touches you, or you think of, or you decide in your brain to raise your finger or move your finger, the neuron is stimulated. And so when a neuron is stimulated, two events, physiochemical events take place. One, local response or graded response. And then two, action potential. Now, local response and coming this name. Okay, so sorry. So we have two physiochemical events that occur when a neuron is stimulated. That is graded potential and action potential. So we're going to take each of them, 1 and 2, and look at. Okay, we're going to look at each of them. Somebody. Okay. Now, what is the graded response or local response? When a neuron is stimulated with a sub-threshold, that means that maybe a very low touch, or a very, maybe somebody is speaking and then you are not hearing the person. Maybe the volume, let me use that. The volume is not loud. That means the threshold is below the normal threshold level. So we call it sub-threshold. Okay. So when a neuron is stimulated with a sub-threshold, it results in electrical potential difference that do not progress from one point to the other. So this response dies off with distance. And the degree of depolarization caused by the graded potential decreases with distance from the original point where the stimulation occurs, and therefore it dies off. So that's how we said a graded response or local response is a non-propagation electrical potential differences across the plasma membrane generated by a stimulus of sub-threshold intensity. Okay, so there are some key things we should pick here. Number one, the stimulus is of sub-threshold. And when that happens, the impulse will not travel, it dies off. See that it dies off. So that's why at the beginning of the definition we said non-propagation. Yes. Non-propagation. Electrical potential difference. So it dies off. Now, this is a term that we will be explaining, depolarization. We said the depolarization caused by the gradient potential decreasing with time. It decreases, and therefore it decreases to the extent it dies off. Okay, so that is what we should take care of. So we have subthreshold and the thing dies off, non-propagation. Very important. That was so that's the local response. So in that one, if this is the neuron I'm drawing, and then we have the axon. Okay, so if there is stimulation here at this level, it will just move small and maybe dies off. It will not continue to the full length of the axon. That is what we are talking about. It dies off with this time, and we call that one a local response or graded response. Then I come to the number 2. That is the action potential. Now, action potential is also known as the impulse that we know in neuron. In this case, it is a self-propagation. You see, the other one was non-propagation. So this is very important here. Self-propagation. Electrical potential difference across a membrane, that a membrane of the neuron. When it is stimulated by a stimulus, look at it here, a stimulus of equal to or above threshold value. You see that? So the other one was sub-threshold, and therefore the thing could not progress. But this one, if it is a normal threshold, the stimulus is of the normal threshold value or above the threshold value. For instance, like I was saying, if somebody speaks and you don't hear, maybe speak small, you whisper, and nobody hears you. Okay. If it shouts, people will hear. It's above the threshold, but you can still hear. Or you are playing music, loud music, that is supra threshold, but you still hear. There is so it's an action potential will result in that. Now, what are the characteristics of action potential? It is characterized by 1, rapid depolarization. So now what is depolarization? Rapid depolarization followed by a slow repolarization. That is one characteristic. Then 2, it also characterized by reversal of polarity. And action in action potential, you know, in the resting membrane, we said the inner part is negative, like this. Outer part positive. Okay, positive. And inner part negative. So in action potential, the such that the interior with respect to the exterior of the cell. Okay, so that is what we'll be looking at. That is what we are looking at in that. So let me see some people questions. Say what? Explain the local response again. And the meaning. Yeah, so I'll explain I'll explain the meaning of the action potential, the depolarization. Now, initially, when the neuron is in resting, we said the outer part is negative Okay, the outer part is positive, like I've written here. And then the inner part is negative, like this one. So when there is stimulation, depolarization, that means at this moment, when it's resting, it's polar. Then we have positive pole and negative pole. But when it is stimulated, then it means that the polarity that was there will not be, it will now become depolarized. That is what it means. It's no more polar. Okay, so there's that depolarization. And then followed by a slow repolarization, it becomes polar again. I don't know why we get to understand what I'm saying, but when there is stimulation, the rapid depolarization, that means the polar nature of it had been disintegrated or destroyed. Okay. Then, okay, J hand is up. Let me see what is there. Yeah, J, on mute.
Yes, Doc. So I want to be sure if I get the concept of the local or the graded and the action potential concept. I want to be sure if I get it.
Yes.
So in the case of heat, for instance, the neurons, the sensory neurons in my hands are dormant, or they are in a resting membrane potential state when I've not touched anything hot. And then, so the neuron now becomes a resting membrane potential. I don't know if that is correct.
There was a time your net like we couldn't hear again.
Okay.
So you go to yeah.
So I'm saying that in the case of heat,
yeah, we got that one.
Yeah. So for instance, the sensory neurons in my hand, if it has not touched any heat, it means the sensory neuron there is at rest.
It's at rest, exactly.
Okay. Now, so for instance, the local or the graded, does it mean that if I touch and then the thing is not really hot, it means that there wouldn't be any stimulus from my brain, which will cause.
No. So very good. So when you touch and it's not hot and you don't feel it, it means that
it's a local.
It's a look. The impulse has started, but because the thing is not hot, it's not up to the threshold.
Okay. So it is below the threshold.
It's below the threshold, so it will not get to the brain. The information the brain, it will die off.
Okay.
And that is what we call local response. So
all right.
No detect it because it was below threshold.
Okay.
But when you touch and it's hot, that one is to get to the brain. That one we call it action potential.
Okay. So that is when there will be depolarization.
Very good. Very good. And we are still going to learn more about the depolarization. Like how the depolarization itself will occur. That's the next concept we will be learning. Okay. All right. So thank you, Jay. So let's go on. Now this is drawing. Now we're going to describe the phases of the action potential. Okay. We mentioned two phases, depolarization and repolarization. And there's another one called hyperpolarization. So if remember I said we have this diagram here. If a neuron is resting, the resting membrane potential is minus 70 millivolts. So that's why this line is the resting membrane. Okay, indicated here. So you see that this one is resting membrane potential. That is minus 70. Now, like Jay said, if you put your finger on hot object, very good. So the moment your finger touches the hot object, then we have in the module 1, we talked about receptors, and then we talk about channels. So we have some channel on the membrane of the neuron, and these channels are called sodium ion channels. And because it deals with voltage, so they are called voltage gated. Remember, we were saying that some are ligand gated and some are voltage gated. Okay, channels on the membrane. So if I put my finger, okay, your own, if you put your finger on hot iron, what happens is that this sodium ion channel will start to open. Okay, and when sodium ion channels open, when sodium is entering into the cell, then remember, when they are entering into the cell, they will try to move the membrane potential, which was at the resting here. They will start to move it upward towards their equilibrium potential. Remember, the equilibrium potential for sodium is plus 60. So they will start to move it toward the positive line, that the positive 60. Now, if the amount of sodium that entered is able to move the equilibrium, the membrane potential up to about minus 55 millivolts, 55 millivolts, then action potential will resolve. How the action potential resolve? It will result in opening of more voltage-gated sodium ion channels that continue to drive the membrane potential upward toward the positive, toward the positive 60. So you see I have passed 0 and it's going towards here. So about up to about 30 plus 30, the sodium, the voltage gated sodium ion channel that open will close like this. And so when they close, then that means they can't drive the membrane potential again, so they stop at that level. So the phase that the rising phase is called the depolarization phase. That is the phase where sodium ion gates are open to allow sodium to move into the cell. Remember, sodium were outside. So now that it is open, sodium will be moving into the cell. And now they are moving into the cell, they are driving the membrane potential towards their equilibrium potential, which is plus 60 millivolts. But it will not get there to the plus 60, but around plus 30. And there are factors that prevent it from getting to the 30. Number 1, we said the sodium ion channel will enter into a state we call inactivation phase. Okay, so they enter into inactivation phase. Number 2, the potassium ion channel at that level also start to open. And so when potassium ion channel are opening, then potassium ion also move out of the cell. So there is efflux of potassium ion. And when potassium ion are moving out, they will also try to bring back the membrane potential to their equilibrium potential, which is what? Minus 90 millivolts. You see that they will open for a longer period of time, so they will be able to drive the membrane potential and even pass the resting membrane potential and move toward the minus 90 millivolts. And this phase is called hyperpolarization. Like had even past the resting membrane, the polar phase, and hyperpolarize it. And then it will now return to the resting membrane by the three factors that we mentioned. One, by the passive movement of potassium ion, then the sodium potassium ATPs, that the carrier molecule that carry two potassium into the cell and three sodium out of the cell to bring back the resting membrane potential. That is how it is. I'll repeat, so don't worry. Somebody say, is it the effect of the active potential that causes life or fight effect after touching a very hot object? Okay, so now, yes, it is a whatever thing that get to the brain is through action potential. If you touch a hot object, if the action potential is not generated, then it will not get to the brain. It is the action potential that will drive, that will go to the brain to inform the brain, and then the brain now interprets it. In the, you remember, we have the post-central gyros, where interpretation of sensation occurs. Then we have the pre-central gyro, which is for movement. So information will initiate there to say, move your hand out. Then the action potential will drive all the way to the muzzle that will enable you to take out your hand. These are very fast activities. It's not like we are describing it for long. They are very in milliseconds. Okay, they are milliseconds, not like we are describing it for. That's why the moment you touch the hot object, the action potential is generated. And how does it generate? Sodium ion channel will open and sodium will rush into the cell. And as they are rushing into the cell, they are rising the membrane potential. That is depolarization. Then they get to a point and potassium ion channel also open to allow potassium to move, and then they will move out of the cell. And as they are moving out, they are bringing about repolarization. So that is what will happen. So in the long run, so let me draw this one. So you have the depolarization, repolarization. Then another depolarization, repolarization, depolarization. So this is how it will be doing, and it's going to the brain like that. So you have one phase, okay, like this. So first depolarization, repolarization, then another one thing, and it's doing that all the way from your fingers to the brain. If you touch something hot, it drive like that. So depolarization, repolarization, depolarization, and so the sodium ion channel open and close, open, close, and like that. They do that all the way from your fingers to the brain. Then from the brain, the same thing will happen through the motor neuron or the efferent neuron back to the effector organ, which could be a muscle that enable you to take out your hand or your finger from the hot object. All right. Are they asking questions? Let me see those at the YouTube. This one is not full, so some could join. Some people get like YouTube. So we have 30 people at the YouTube. I don't know why some people like the YouTube, because this one is not full. So I'm just looking at the YouTube. Somebody said, "Thank you, please. I don't understand." Somebody said, "Thanks." over it again. What of Gaza? Gaza, what are you saying? Are you in Gaza? Yes.
Sir.
Yes,
So when the thing drops down and passes the resting potential, you said there are some 3 factors that come into play before it gets back to the resting potential. What are those 3 factors?
Oh, I mentioned them under the factors that bring about resting membrane potential. You know, at the beginning, we said 1, the passive movement of potassium across the plasma membrane. Because during resting, the plasma membrane is 50 to 75 times permeable. The plasma membrane is permeable to sodium, to potassium, than it is to sodium. So potassium moves in, it moves out. You know, they are already inside. So it moves out, leaving the inner part negative, and then it will be pulled back. So it's moving across, in and out, in and out, in and out like that. And therefore, bring about the resting membrane potential. Then number 2, we said the sodium, potassium, the activity of the sodium, potassium ATP. And this it carries sodium and then 3 sodium out of the cell and 2 potassium into the cell. And that also contributes to the resting membrane potential. And indirectly, as the sodium potassium is still carrying the ions, it also brings about a concentration gradient. It builds a concentration gradient for these ions to allow them to move in and out passively. Therefore, bringing about the resting membrane potential. Gaza, that is why we are talking about. All right, I will go over like somebody requested. So we're saying that you incidentally, we're using the hot object as a reference point. You incidentally touch a hot object here. Then the thing was at the resting membrane, that is minus 70 millivolts. But when you touch the hot object, sodium ion channel will start to open and sodium are moving into the cell. So when sodium are moving in, they are driving the membrane potential toward positive. And when it's able to drive the membrane potential to about minus 55 millivolts, then an action potential will result. There will be rapid depolarization because at this level, we have what we call voltage-gated sodium ion channel. We open, certainly a lot of them. The more sodium rush into the cell, the azole, and therefore there will be what we call depolarization. When depolarization continues, it drives the membrane toward plus 60, but it will not get there. It will stop around plus 30 millivolts. Now, it's because the sodium ion channel will enter into what we call inactivation phase. Sodium ion channel usually oscillates between 3 stages. Number 1, when they are closed, they can be in a closed phase. So closed phase. Then 2, when you stimulate, when they are closed, you stimulate, they open. So in the open phase. Then 3, when they open within some few milliseconds, they enter into into what we call inactivation phase. Let me write the inactivation here. Inactivation. Okay. So they oscillate between three phases. When they are closed, then you stimulate the open. Then they open, they suddenly enter into what? Inactivation phase. So when we say inactivation phase, when these now within some time, when they are inactivated, within some time, they now go into what? Closed phase again. So it's like a cycle. So from close, open, inactivation, then close again, open, inactivation. When they are in inactivation phase, when you even stimulate them, they do not respond again to a second stimulus. And that we call a refractive period. We'll get to that. When they are in inactivation phase and you stimulate and they do not respond, then we call it inactivated, a refractive period. So at that level, the sodium ion channels here are in their inactivation phase. And therefore, when you stimulate, they do not respond. And then at that level to number 2, the potassium ion channels, look at this here, they are starting to open. And as they are opening, potassium are moving out of the cell. When they are moving across the plasma membrane, they will be driving the membrane potential downward from here. And they will call that one repolarization. And potassium ion channel usually open longer period than the sodium ion channel. Therefore, they will be able to drive the membrane potential all the way to minus 90 millivolts. From here, we have, and this one is called hyperpolarization. Then it now returned to the resting membrane potential. So that is what it is. Okay, and here is so here you can talk.
Okay, no.
Yeah.
Please, I don't know, but I'm seeing a problem, which is actually making most of us not to understand.
Okay, tell me.
Yes, so initially there was a disconnect between what we are learning, and then what actually you were teaching. That is,
Okay.
yes, that is. So what are we talking about? So we are talking about neurons and how they work.
Yeah.
Now, so if you do not get the understanding, if the introduction, you do not really get the introduction, it will be difficult for you to follow through to the later. So I think if you can take the introduction again and then take your time to really explain, then maybe it will help a lot of us to actually follow through. Because if you don't get the introduction, if you don't know what we are learning about, it will be very difficult for you to understand when we get to the action potentials and then the ions involved, moving in and out and all that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. So were you part of the introduction part?
Yes, please. I was part of the introduction part. I got a little confused when we got to the ions in the exons, the membranes of the cell membranes of the neuron. I got a little confused when we got there with regards to the ions that are in the exon or the membrane that are in the intracellular,
like the
and then
the intracellular and then the
extracellular ions. Yes, please, I do. But I don't think all of us do. I think that is where the challenge is coming from. So if you can really take that side again, then maybe it will help. Thank you.
But if we are understanding, how do you know that others don't understand?
So please, you can ask. On my platform, a lot of them are saying they don't understand. Yes.
Oh, they should tell me. Yeah, they should be quiet. They should communicate with me here. Is that not it? Okay, I'm the one. So if you don't say it, I will assume that everybody is fine with it. So when the thing comes and you feel that is your big problem. So Portia is saying what? The whole show. Okay, for the whole show, I'll give you the recording. Thank God the thing has been is recorded. So I'll give you the recording so that you see the whole show. Okay. So somebody to say what don't understand. They are confused. You are confused. Response. Wow. And then somebody say what? Somebody say we are not fine. Benedicta Mohe, we are not fine. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Okay. So, well, I've seen your concern, but it could also be maybe, I don't know, I think some of you are not really science students. That's the challenge we are always having. So if you are science students, sometimes there are some of these, the basics, if you understand like what is a potential difference and all that, you might have done them in physics and so it also helps to serve as a background. I think you did physics when you came for artists or something, or even the science, I don't know. So that really usually gives us a challenge on that. But I'll try to see, let's see this one. Let's see the next slide. We'll just read through it. Maybe we'll be able to appreciate what I'm saying. So we'll read through. Okay, let the question come before we read through that. Edward, let me take Edward from here. You have talked so.
Yeah, sir, please can you show the diagram? I want to ask a question on it. Okay. Go back to the diagram.
I'm there.
Yes. Please. From number 1, I can see sodium and potassium, and I want to ask: is it the sodium and the potassium that will go through, or because I see the sodium out of the cell and the potassium is now entering? So what is so which is which?
No, so very good, Edward. You see that the sodium where you see there's the gate is open. The sodium channel is open to allow the sodium. But look at the potassium. You see there's some dark line. The channel is closed at that time. So the time the stimulation occurs, the sodium ion channel open to allow sodium to move into the cell. But the channel for the potassium are what? Closed. If you are watching the number 1.
Yes.
Now you see that you also look at the sodium, you see one of the channel is closed and one is open. So the initial distance that sodium ion channel will open, then the sodium will be entering. So when sodium enter, they drive the membrane potential to minus 55 millivolts. Then more sodium ion channel, conjugated sodium ion channel will open again. Look at the next one where sodium are opening. You see sodium ion channel, the first one that open is still open. And then I don't know, Edward, I see like the gated above the gated threshold here. See, there's something here. You see this one and this one. Look at it. compare it to the one, you see that this one was not open. It was only this one that opened, the initial part. Then the sodium were entry. Then it drives the memory potential toward the gated threshold. And when that happens, that is the threshold for an action potential to occur. So when that happens, more sodium ion channels have opened. That we call it. So when more sodium ion channels open, more sodium ion move into the cell, therefore bringing about depolarization.
Okay.
Then, very good. Look at the number 2. Look at where the 2 is here. You see that the sodium ion channel, the 2 that were open, they are all closed. Have you seen it?
Yes.
They are all closed with the sodium ion channels here. But look at your right side, the number 3. The sodium ion channel are still closed, but the potassium ion channel have opened to allow potassium to move out of the cell. We call it efflux of potassium ion. And so when potassiums are now moving out, they will also be bringing back the membrane potential. We call it repolarization. Then it will drive it. Why will it pass the membrane potential? It is because potassium ion channel, they will open for a longer period of time. Therefore, they drive the membrane all the way to hyperpolarization. Then there, all the channel are closed. You see sodium closed, potassium closed. Then what happens? The next thing is for you to use the sodium potassium ATP to bring about the resting membrane potential. I don't know. So that is what how I can.
So please, so what happens to the potassium that is being closed?
What happened? You mean the potassium that have moved into the cell?
Like number 1, for instance, you said the sodium ions will move, but the potassium gate will close.
Yes.
So what happened to the potassium when the gate is closed?
But they are in the cell. They are in the intracellular fluid. So nothing happened to them. They are there. They get that the gate is closed, so they cannot move out.
Oh, okay. So when all these processes goes on, at the end, what does it result in?
Very good. So at the end, you see this part, I use my hand to draw here. So we're saying that when this process is doing that, it will do that and it remove from your finger. We are just using the hot, let's say you touch the hot plate with your finger. So it will do that, it moving in the nerve like that. It doing that in the nerve, then it will get to the brain. Then the brain will now interpret it in the postcentral gyrus that you have touched hot object. And then decision is taken. And that decision is now maybe from the precentral gyrus, that's the motor cortex. Information, the same movement will occur, like interior become positive, then this one becomes, so it will do that and then it get back to the muscle and then stimulate the muscle so that you can take your finger out from the hot plate.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me see, Newman.
Sir, thank you very much. First, I want to thank Edward for asking this question because it has enlightened me. I want to understand this. It means that during the stimulus, when during the stimulus, it means when all the 2 ions that comes into play, that sodium and potassium, are at rest before you touch something, as the class rep first of all said. It means that for you to for messages to go to the brain through the neuron, it means that it is only sodium that comes into play. I want to get this understanding. It means the sodium, the sodium comes into play. It is the sodium that moves and gives signal to the brain. Then when the pain, let's say what if it is a pain that is at a peak or it's at the last level, when you can the pain you can't even determine now it is at the highest, it is at the highest. Then from there, potassium now also takes over, try to bring give me this thing. Now try to, once there's a signal to the brain, and you have taken a different
Newman, because I've gotten your answer. Hey, your
okay.
question. Now what happens is that it's not like the way you are thinking. Okay.
Okay.
It's not like that. So the active potential is made up of two components. For a complete active potential, I have two components. That is a depolarization phase. And that depolarization phase is due to what? The sodium ion channel opening, then sodium moves into the cell. Then the second phase is what? Repolarization phase, where potassium ion also open to allow potassium to move out of the cell. So let me try to draw a neuron. Okay, like you have a neuron here, like this. Okay, so it's from here, and then we want the information to go all the way to the brain or wherever. Let me make it this way. So
That's it.
let's say I've drawn this one into different portions like this. So at part A, let's say this A, this side is B, then we have C, D, have you seen that? So at A, the inner part will be positive, like originally, if it is resting, we say the inner part will be negative, is that not it? Inner part will be negative like this, and the outer part will be positive in this way. Okay. So when you stimulate, let's say you are stimulating a thing at this level. Now the A part will result in what? It will result in reversal of polarity. So it means that at the A part, this will become positive and the outer part become negative.
Okay.
Do you get it? Now,
yes,
how will the A part become positive? It's because the moment you touch, more sodium will run in together to make it positive. And then potassium ion will open within a shorter period. Potassium ion will also open to allow potassium to also move out. That's repolarization. You get that? Then it will move to what? That activity will be will travel to B, like portion B. Then the same thing will happen. Repolarization. Then it moves to what? C, then T, then T. It's going to the brain up to what? Where the brain is.
Okay.
Together, they now stimulate it. So it's not like potassium will have something there up to a point, then a sodium also, or sodium start, potassium take over. But at one point, the depolarization and repolarization will have to occur there. Then it transmitted to another portion, the next portion. Then move to another. So as it's doing from A to B to C to D, that's what we call propagation. We say cell propagation.
Okay. So it means it happens simultaneously.
It happens simultaneously, but with a small gap, so that it allows the depolarization to occur, then repolarization occur at the same portion, let's say A. Then it transmitted to B, where B power also here will now become negative, positive, and this side is negative. Then it goes to this, and then the same thing occur. Then it propagates that all the way to the brain.
Understood.
Now, very good. Somebody was like, what we are learning is departing with what we are teaching or something like that. There was a JJ wanted to say something like that. Meanwhile, when I was to start, I was like, we are nurses, midwives, we are public health nurses. Okay. You see, you don't finish and you don't understand how pain is even. I give you pain as an example. Like, how do you feel the pain? How did the pain get there? We say it passed through the neuron, but how did the impulse or the action potential generated? That's what we are trying to understand. Okay, so it's not like it's out of context. Yet that you are not understanding, but not out of context. Okay, it's what we are learning. You see, that is why you are doing maybe from a rural nursing or public community health, you are doing degree. The degrees help you to open your mind for you to understand how things happen and not get that, oh, when somebody has is having pain, you can do cold compress or warm compress. How does the cold compress result in reduction of the pain? Now, in this our learning, we'll get to a point we say, okay, factors that increase the velocity or the speed of action potential. And one of them is cold. It's cold, like temperature. Let me use that. Temperature, when it's you put ice block in your hand, for some time, when you touch the pad, you don't feel pain and you don't feel that you are touching because the decreased temperature decrease the action potential to the brain, and therefore you don't feel it. So that's why cold compress is done to reduce the amount of action potential that go to the brain, and therefore reduce the pain. So it's not like you get cold compress. Do you understand the mechanism that bring about the reduction in pain? And that is why we are learning. So it's not out of place here. Okay. So somebody said, if I understand, sodium ion entering the cell causes depolarization. That's right. And then while potassium ion entering the cell causes repolarization, yes. And what? Hyperpolarization. Gabriela, you are very right. That is how it is. We also have Sayuri.
So, if if I'm understanding the whole process, that means this process has to act quickly so that the brain can interpret what is happening, therefore instructing the muscles to contract so that the patient will disassociate himself from the pains that the person incurs. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That is
then,
how.
Okay. Then the next thing I want to find out is I've seen the gauge threshold. Then we have the negative 55 MV. Then the stimulus. Is it the level at which the pains, especially the stimulus, the pain should reach before this process start occurring, or any level it can happen, but that's the maximum point that it should reach?
Yes. So for the action potential to progress to the brain, then the number of sodium ion that entered the cell should be able to drive the membrane potential to the minus 55 millivolts. Then it will now result in action potential. If it doesn't get to minus 55 millivolts, then it will result in what we call the local response or graded response. That means it has not reached the threshold. Okay. So I don't know whether Jehan is still up because you want to ask the question or the old one. Jay.
Sure, please, my hand is up.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find out something during the repolarization.
Yeah.
Where I want to find out where the sodium potassium ATPase is during this phase.
During the repolarization,
Yes,
you want to find out, and come with the question again.
I want to find out where the sodium potassium ATPase,
Mhm.
where that one is at this moment, because I know that when the neuron is dormant, or when there isn't any stimulus and the neuron is resting, it is the passive movement of potassium by this sodium potassium ATPase that causes, yes, the neuron to be at rest. So
Yes.
in this case, that there's a stimulus and sodium has moved beyond, the stimulus has caused sodium to move beyond the gate threshold.
Yes.
Yes, the minus 55, and then now there's an action potential. And now that there is repolarization,
Yeah.
where is the sodium potassium ATPase?
Okay. Yes. So the sodium potassium ATPase, these are in the plasma membrane. They are, you remember in the plasma membrane, so we have protein, and these proteins serve as carriers, and some serve as enzymes, some serve as catalytic receptors or ligand gated receptors or voltage gated receptors. So the sodium potassium ATP are carrier molecules which are part of the plasma membrane. Okay, they are part of the plasma membrane. And during the action potential, like when there is rapid depolarization phase, the amount of sodium that is entering is plenty that this sodium potassium we cannot just carry them
Okay.
fast out
Okay,
like that.
okay.
And then the amount of potassium that is moving out is also a lot. Like
Okay.
the sudden rush of
Okay.
it out. Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
So
so
at the point that it's done, then they will now be carrying them like that.
okay. So I think I understand now, because the sodium potassium ATPase ordinarily carries 2 potassium into the cell and then 3 sodium out of the cell. So when there is action potential, there are a lot of sodium and a lot of potassium either moving or in or out of the cell. So the sodium potassium ATPase cannot be in play at this moment.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You people are asking question. Okay. Newman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, I would like to make a suggestion. And I think we are getting the thing very well. If I say we, maybe I am getting what you are teaching. But I realized that the first time we had your course, this online course, this particular model, it was in the morning, and the understanding was very deeper than this. I am thinking it because of the time, and I would like to suggest, if possible, we get to campus. Your this anatomy and physiology thing should be early in the morning for the benefit of we the student, so that we can understand, so we can appreciate what you are teaching us. Other than that, as you have said earlier on, some people are not science students, and it's very difficult. It's only those who are science background, they are getting it. So please, it's an appeal I'm trying to make.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
The class reps come together, talk to the coordinator. I think Dr. Cook. We've already informed them, but the timetable will come out, and the last year we already fought a lot. And then to extend that, somebody say, how do we know that in the evening you people don't understand those sort of things? So I think you can also put your map. Let me do that. Put your map on inside it. Okay. So J and then the other class rep, you can appeal to Dr. Cook, who is the coordinator, so that they are making the face-to-face lecture timetable. Then they will consider it. But I've also talked to them about that. So I think Edward hand is still up. I don't know whether the old one.
Yes, sir, please. I want to ask, supposing all these, like, let me create a scenario like the heat one. Supposing your hands will touch a heat, all these processes will go on for your brain to interpret that you've really touched something that is hot, so that you remove your hands.
Exactly.
What if a person has touched a hot object, but the brain, but the person doesn't feel it is a hot object? What goes in there?
Okay. So it could be that that means you might have a neuronal either the information is not getting to the brain. Okay, the information is not getting to the brain due to if you have neural injury, like injury to the nerve, so you touch and you see that the information will move like that continuously. So if there is any break of the neuron, it will not get to the brain. Okay. Now there are times let's say you are cooking, and you want to remove a hot pot. You want to remove the pot from the fire. Already your brain is aware that this thing you are going to bake is hot. Okay, so you hold it, you are feeling the heat, but you still hold it and go and cook. It's not like you are not feeling the heat. So that means what's the sensory loss? Like the sensory problem, it means that the brain, like our last lecture on the brain, there is a portion of the brain that interprets the sensation. So imagine you have stroke, and then the portion that interprets sensation is the part that injured. That's where the injury is. Have you seen that? So the information will go all right to the portion that's supposed to now interpret it. But because it's injured, it cannot interpret it, and therefore you will not feel the pain. So those are some of the things. Let's take another condition like leprosy. Leprosy, the Mycobacterium lepra usually destroy the peripheral nerves. So it's not sending the impulses to the brain. So you type cotton or you are stepping on nail, but you are not feeling it. It's not going to the brain. Okay, because the Mycobacterium lepra has destroyed the nerves, and therefore the inflow of sodium, potassium, those ones are not functioning. So it will not get to the brain, and therefore you will not feel the pain. So that is one condition that can. And then we have conditions that another one like multiple sclerosis. Now, in multiple sclerosis, what happens is that the myelin sheath of the peripheral nerve are destroyed. If the peripheral nerve have myelin sheath made by the Schwann cell, these are destroyed, and therefore they decrease the speed at which impulses are transmitted to the brain. And then you may have pain and then other difficulties. Let me also bring another need why we are doing this. You see that we've been giving local anesthesia to patients. Let's say you want to do some suturing, a small cut, you want to do suturing. You inject local anesthesia around the part, the wound. Why do you do that? Now, when you do that, the local anesthesia, they are supposed to go and block the sodium ion channel we have just talked about. They're supposed to go and block the sodium ion channel so that when you are cutting or you are pricking, you have the needle, you use the needle to prick. The person will not, because the sodium ion channel are blocked, sodium cannot move into the cell and potassium cannot move out, and therefore no action potential, and therefore the brain will not get the information that you are suturing the person. That is the function of local anesthesia or local anesthetic agent. You inject it and you go and block the sodium ion channels. So there are sodium ion channel blockers. Okay, and therefore when they are blocked, you see that you can't feel the pain again. So those who are thinking that we are doing something outside is really not so. Okay, you should be able to understand. Okay, somebody, what did Jay now say? See you.
Hello, Doc.
Yes.
Doc, please, our time is up and we have another class to join right now.
Okay. Even my time is also up. Oh, it's 30 something. Wow. Tell you all the best, man. I wish you all the best. And sound sleep.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Let me see, is it Fekna? Fekna and Happy App. Let me find out where.
No.
Yes.
Please.
Doc.
Okay, sorry.
Somebody asked, in the case of epilepsy, what happened?
Okay. So is that what happened when one is being attacked by epilepsy as well? Very good. Now, epilepsy is due to uncontrolled action potential that is generated in the brain, especially in the we have the postcentral gyrus, where we have the primary motor cortex. So there is uncontrolled, uncoordinated, continuous generation of this action potential that go to contract the muscle, and the person start to contract and convulse in that. Yes. So that is what happens, uncontrolled. And normally it's supposed to be like voluntary initiation of the contraction. But in this case, it is not controlled. The action potential is just come, like it's stimulating the muscle continuously. Yeah, fitness. So that is what happens. Thank you. Wish everybody well.
Oh.
Yes.
Please, will I get a slide as soon as possible?
Oh, I put a slide before we started the lecture. Check the Telegram page.
The Telegram. Okay, all right.
The
Thank
Telegram. I put a slide before we started the lecture.
Okay, please. Thank you.
All right. All the best.